Democratic member of the Texas House of Representatives, Trey Martinez Fischer, joins me now. It's good to see you, sir. You're coming to us from Illinois, the big flag of Texas behind you notwithstanding. You've been through this before. What do you expect to happen, and how can these results be any different than in the past when Democrats who bugged out of Texas ultimately returned?
Well, every corn break is different and special, but really what lies in the balance here is our democracy. I mean, in the most powerful democracy in the world, we are having this stolen right before our eyes. So if it takes a group of Texans to camp out in Illinois, to rise up and wake this country up, to let folks know, like, hey, there is stuff going on here. We need to push back on this agenda. We need to have a system where voters pick their politicians and not let politicians pick their voters just because Donald Trump's afraid to lose an election fair and square. And I think it's working. You see momentum throughout the country, from California to New York, from Illinois to Texas.
The Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, has just put out a statement describing your actions as a cowardly desertion of your responsibility as an elected official.
Well, that's rich coming from Attorney General Paxton. What we would say is, like, listen, I don't respond to Ken Paxton. I respond to the constituents who elected me. I recognize the moment that we are in. People expect Democrats to fight like Democrats. And when you're going to come to my chamber and because you've bent the knee to Donald Trump and you're acting in desperation to create 5 Republican seats in Congress at the expense of Latinos and African Americans, we're just not going to sit by and say, come on in. You're in for a fight. And this fight is going to be meaningful. And like I said, we're going to wake up this nation. I'm told that for every seat that's created in Texas by a Republican, there'll be a governor somewhere else. That if it's going to be a Donald Trump race to the bottom, we will meet you halfway. And if Texas Democrats are the spark, well, then that's the role we'll play. This is not the fight that we asked for, but this is the fight we will finish.
So my audience understands what you're saying is ultimately the Texas Republicans will prevail because you'll ultimately have to go back. But in the interim, you hope this inspires actions, New York, Illinois, and California, to redraw their maps to equalize the outcome in the midterms.
Well, I think we never give up. I think there is always a strategy to derail the entire piece of legislation. Let's be very clear. In short order, secretaries of state have to issue districts. People have to know where they're going to run. There is an entire process that takes place. We have men and women overseas that are going to get their ballots. A lot has to happen now. You just can't take your sweet time to change these districts. And if we're able to manage a quorum break that long, maybe that disrupts that process. And then there's the entire legal aspect of this to see whether or not a court will even allow this to happen. So listen, America is seeing with this, hyper-partisanship and this MAGA extreme governance, Texans have seen this for 20, if not 30 years. We know this fight, and we're in it for the long haul.
How long are you prepared to stay outside of the boundaries of the great state of Texas?
Well, I only pack one bag, so that's a clue right there. And I think it's as long as it takes. I mean, again, we have a delegation of House members that traveled to Albany today to meet with Governor Hochul to listen to our concerns and to understand that she may have a role to play in this big picture democracy. We had a delegation leave California. We're in communications with the governors of Maryland and other states. I think people understand where we are, and this is a real moment. And we need to rise to the occasion. And listen, what I hear more than anybody else, it's refreshing to see Democrats fight. And that's what this is really about, is to let folks know that we're not giving up and we don't care what the odds are. All we care about is being the voice for the people we represent.
And when you tell my audience that democracy is at stake, the Supreme Court, when asked this question before in previous efforts, said it was constitutionally permissible to redraw district lines mid-session. So what part of this, at its core, is anti-democratic or anti-constitutional?
Man, that's a fantastic question. Let me just tell you. So these lines that we currently have in Texas, Republican senators who drew them took an oath in federal court before 3 federal judges and said these maps are legal and have nothing to do with race. Now we have a Trump Justice Department that says we need to change these districts because you use race. So my question is, who's lying? Is the Trump DOJ lying? Is the senator from Houston lying who drew these lines? And so, listen, you can draw these. It doesn't make it right, but you cannot do this. The Supreme Court didn't say, oh, by the way, do this whenever you want, and we don't care if you run over the backs of African Americans and Latinos and Asians. I think there's some protections for that. And so, like I said, you can do what you want with legislation, but we're all equal in federal court.
Member of the Texas House of Representatives, Trey Martinez Fischer. Sir, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Right now, we're going to be joined by a Republican member of the Texas House of Representatives, Brian Harrison. Mr. Harrison, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. I think you've had a chance to hear some of what Texas Democrats have been telling me for the benefit of this show. I want to give you an open floor. Respond.
Yeah, pure, cynical, hypocritical nonsense. Everything they're talking about. I mean, the height of the dishonesty, fleeing the state. We were on the floor 30 minutes ago. They weren't here. They're hiding behind Governor Pritzker in Illinois. Acting as if the state of Texas is doing something novel or totally different is preposterous. We're not even doing the types of things that states like California, New York, and Illinois have done to a much more aggressive stance. For example, why didn't a single one of my Democrat colleagues mention to you that in Illinois, where Republican voters have 45% of the vote, Governor Pritzker only gives Republicans 15% of the congressional delegation? He mentioned California. Well, let's talk about what California does. California, 40% of the vote in California is for Republicans. California gives them 17% of the congressional districts. Let's talk about New York. 42% of the voters in New York are Republican, but New York gives them 26% of the congressional districts. I could go down the line. What they're angry about, they're not angry that states are redistricting for partisan political advantage. No. They are totally fine with it when all these blue states have done it for the last decade. What they're mad about, but what they won't tell you, isn't that states redistrict for partisan purposes, but that a Republican state is doing this. And quite frankly, the state of Texas should have done this before now. We should have done it in the regular session, and we should have this already in the rearview mirror. And I'm going to make another point about this. One thing the Democrats said that is true: the stakes couldn't be higher. Like the future of the republic, the future of America could quite literally be hanging in the balance, because if we have a margin in the U.S. Congress less than 5 seats, our redistricting efforts here could quite frankly control whether or not the Congress in the upcoming midterms falls to the radical Democrat Party. And so the state of Texas and Republicans, elected Republicans in Texas, the elected Republican leadership here in Texas, should be doing everything we can to make sure that Congress doesn't fall to the Democrats. And quite frankly, this is an abject failure of the elected Republican leadership in the state of Texas, who let the Democrats flee, even though we had quorum and we had all the tools to keep them here. So across the board, everything they've just said to you is complete cynical nonsense. But also, I've got to be an equal opportunity critic here and say that in this case, as is too often the case in the great state of Texas, Democrats are fighting harder for the future than the elected Republicans who have controlled the Austin swamp for far too long.
Mr. Harrison, you said this should have happened before. Does that mean you question the legitimacy of the reason given for doing this redistricting now, meaning it has to correct a racial flaw that wasn't identified earlier?
No, that's not what I mean at all. What I mean is there's some confusion about this because we're not actually in a regular session. We gavelled in January. My point is that we had the entire first half of the year, we had the entire regular session where things like this should have happened. But on Republican priority across the line, the Texas government failed. From property taxes to election integrity to bans on taxpayer-funded lobbying, all types of Republican priorities did not pass in Texas during the regular session, like redistricting, because, quite frankly, Democrats are being given control. And one thing that I wish CBS and other news would report, all these Democrats that are fleeing the state, they're the ones that actually elected the so-called Republican leadership in the Texas House of Representatives. Voters in Texas, they want bold Republican leadership. They deserve bold Republican leadership. They reelected President Trump with a 14-point landslide. But what these Austin, Texas-level Republicans do is they turn around and give Democrats power that they didn't earn at the ballot box. And the Democrat caucus, the literal Texas House Democrats, who are abandoning their post to do the bidding of the ultra-liberal Democrat bosses in Washington, D.C., they are actually the power center, the ones who elected the nominally Republican Speaker of the Texas House, who had all the power to stop them from fleeing the state. It's one of the biggest undertold stories of their ability to delay or potentially thwart the redistricting efforts here, that's not a victory for Democrats anywhere near as much as it is an abject failure for the weak establishment Republicans that have controlled the Texas government for far too long.
Brian Harrison, I appreciate the time and your willingness to participate. Thanks so much.
Always great to be with you.